Alright guys, so this is going to be another filler video. This was just a video I did on a weekend, couple months ago. And I did the video, and then I edited it, and I realized there was a couple things I forgot to do for whatever reason, or I would have liked to have done. So I'm obviously from the title, I'm just comparing some, what I would consider maybe like higher end ISA cards I had sitting around, video cards. I just wanted to compare them in a couple systems. And one thing I didn't do, I didn't put in like a really known crappy ISA card. They're all kind of, well, I don't know if they're all high end, but I wanted to put in like a known like slow video ISA card, just for the comparison reasons, and I neglected to do that. And then I could have gone back and reshot things and redid the tests, but at that point it was just I don't know, I just didn't really it wasn't feeling it. And the other thing, I just found the video to be not very interesting. It just wasn't. So I did the video, I edited it, and then I rewatched it, and I was like, yeah, you know what, this isn't very interesting. So I just kind of shelved it, and I just stuck it in a folder, and I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna release that one. But yeah, I actually have a lot of kind of cool projects currently I can make videos of, and I'm planning to, but just time and a lot of things going on, and I'm kind of in a spot now that I don't have any videos ready. I've spaced out my videos a lot. I used to, at first I released a video like every 2 weeks, and then it was every 3 weeks, and now I try to do it every 3 or 4 weeks max, and I do not have anything ready at the moment. I just have this video that I kind of shelved. So what the heck, I'll just put this out as a filler video. I just want to do this little forward just so you guys know, take it with a grain of salt. I didn't think it's very interesting. Maybe some of you guys will think there's some merit in it. So enjoy. Today's video, we'll be taking a look at some of the faster ISA cards out there and seeing how well they perform against each other.
We got 20-minute videos on old technology, computers, laser discs, and some CDs. We got two little dogs licking their balls on the screen, and now it's time for the show.
So before we take a look at the video cards, I just wanted to quickly address the methodology we're going to be using here and the reasons behind it. So how you would typically do something like this, if you wanted to see the maximum potential of a graphics card, is you'd put it in a much faster machine. You'd get rid of the other bottlenecks. So you want to get rid of the CPU bottleneck. So you'd put it in something like a Pentium or up, and that should get rid of any CPU bottlenecks, and then you can just see the pure power of the video card in the benchmark tests. I'm not going to do that just because I want to see the practical speed, top speed of these cards in more practical use, if that makes sense. When you have something like a Pentium that has PCI slots, no one's going to put a 16-bit ISA video card in those machines, except just to goof around or to try something different. You're going to use a PCI card. There's just nobody really putting ISA video cards in Pentium and up builds. Where you're really going to see that, at least with these higher-end 16-bit ISA video cards, realistically, is 386 and mostly lower-end 486 systems. So the system I want to test is what I think most people are going to be using these cards in, and that is a faster 386. So this is my main 386 machine, and it has a AMD 40 megahertz 386, and that's kind of like the Cadillac of 386s. That is the fastest 386 CPU, and that's probably generally what most enthusiasts and people are going to put a high-end 16-bit ISA video card in. Now, lower end 46s would work too, like a 33 megahertz 46. But in my experience with the retro computer community and stuff, when most retro computer enthusiasts I know, when they're building a 46, they usually go with the higher end. They usually go with at least a 66 megahertz DX2 machine or up as far as 46s go. And they generally go for things like VLB, which is pretty common when you get to the later end of the 46, like the 66 megahertz DX2 and up. So the vast majority of 46s I see being built by enthusiasts are those DX2 and up machines with VLB slots and VLB cards. I don't see a lot of those 33 megahertz you know, 50 megahertz, 40 megahertz, 46 builds that only have ISA. I'm sure there's lots out there, but it just seems like in my experience, most people are going to be using a 386 with a 16-bit ISA card. So that's what we're going to do. So all the testing is going to be done on this 40 megahertz 386 machine. It's a nice motherboard. It has onboard cache. It's higher end. So I think these cards are going to feel right at home in this machine. And this is really where I'm most interested. Actually, the winner is probably going to find a permanent place in this machine. So without further ado, now that that is explained, let's take a look at the cards in question. Now, not every high-end card is represented here. I don't have every single ISA card out there. I don't have like a real high-end Cirrus Logic 16-bit ISA card. I don't have like the Mach 64 chip, I think. The ATI Mach 64, I think, came in an ISA form. At least the 32 did. I don't have either of those. So, but we are going to take a look at a card from ATI. So this is the VGA Wonder X24. We've seen this card before. Actually, this was in my high-end 20 megahertz 286 machine. Fortunately, that motherboard has gone kaput. So this card may be finding a new home in a different 286. But I wanted to include it here because this is the last of the VGA Wonder cards. It's pretty fast. I believe this works in 8 and 16-bit ISA slots. Very handy. Massive 1 megabyte of memory here. Like I said, I'm not going to go into all the technical details, like what it can do and stuff, but this should be a very fast and competent VGA card. It's also the only card in our roundup here that has, well, that's a bus mouse, we don't have to worry about, but that has a VGA, standard VGA, and then it has the older digital style if you wanted to hook it up to like a CGA or EGA monitor, and it auto switches. We'll be seeing this card again regardless, because I'm going to be putting this in another machine that I'm going to do a video on eventually, but I want to see how it stacks up against the other cards. I believe this is from 1992, so yeah, this is definitely a later card. Got that older style VESA feature connector up there, so yeah, cool card. Alright, let's move on to our next card here. This is another card I'm very interested in seeing. This is a WDC card. Looks very similar to last card. I believe it has 1 megabyte of memory on it as well. Also a 1992 card. This is the WDC 90C31LR. I haven't really used this card other than testing it to see if it works. This is supposed to be a very fast card. It had very good reviews back in the day. People speak highly of this card. I looked on Vogons and whatnot, and people, this is a screamer of an ISA card. So this is really a fast card from what I've read. So I'm curious how it stacks up. All right, so moving on to our next card, we have the old Trident. I had to throw in a Trident card. Now this is the best apparently of the old ISA Trident cards. So this is the old venerable 8900 chipset. Very common card. I'm not sure. I think it might be 1 megabyte, but it might be 512 kilobyte. Not 100% sure. This, depending on your jumper settings, this will also work in 16 or 8-bit slots. But the D revision of this is actually really, well, comparatively fast. I believe it has something to do with the way that the memory is handled on this particular card, the D revision of the 8900. So very simple looking card, but it's, from what I've read and seen, it's kind of a hidden gem of the ISA video cards. The D revision supposed to be pretty fast, so we'll see how it stacks up. Alright, and then I wanted to throw in kind of a wild card. This guy here. I'm not sure the date on this. This is a little bit different. This is from Ahead. Not a lot of information on this card. I've known them before. I've seen graphics chipsets from them before, but not a ton. I believe it's 1 megabyte, again a whopping 1 megabyte of memory. It also goes by AVGA Deluxe. From the little information I could find on this is supposed to be another fast card, so we'll see how it stacks up to the other cards. And then lastly, supposedly the king of 16-bit ISA, we have our entry from Sang or Tang, I don't know how you pronounce it, probably Sang Labs. And this is the 16-bit ISA iteration of the ET4000 chipset, which is very well known as one of the fastest 2D VGA chipsets for DOS. Usually when people are citing the fastest VGA cards for DOS, they talk about the VLB version of this card with this chip, or a similar chip, the ET4000. So we'll see how the 16-bit ISA version goes with that chip. Again, I believe it's a whopping 1 megabyte. I'm not 100% sure. We'll look at that when we get these cards installed and we check out things with the benchmark tests. So I expect high quality results from this card. So we'll see. So that's our competitors. 5 cards. We'll see how they do stacked up against each other in the 40 megahertz 386. So I don't know 100% if we're going to hit a CPU bottleneck with some of these cards. I don't know, but I still think that is this kind of system that we'd be seeing these type of cards in the most. So that's what we're going to test them in.
Alright, so let's kind of quickly go over the results here. So a lot of these are pretty even, pretty close. We only have like one test out of these 4 benchmarks we ran where there's a definite difference here. And what we're seeing in these tests, basically the ET4000 is at the top, which we expected, and the WDC card, which I also kind of expected, is at the top of all these tests, pretty much dead even with the ET4000. A couple of these tests, they sort of trade places by like fraction of a percent maybe, but they're pretty much dead even. After that, we have the Trident, the 8900D, and the VGA Wonder XL card, pretty much taking up the middle spot. It looks like in speed the Trident has a slight edge, but in practical use I doubt you'd really see any difference. And then at the bottom is our wild card, the A-head VGA card with the V5000 chip on it. It's actually not too far behind in these tests, except Wolfenstein 3D, the last one, where we see the most differences. So some applications and games, if you're using this card, you know, you'd be able to tell a difference between it and you know, using the WDC or the ET4000, but it's not too far. So I don't know if maybe we're hitting some bottlenecks here with some of these. I don't know. So the one test that we see the biggest difference is the Wolfenstein 3D, and I don't actually, all those numbers seem a little bit low for a 40 megahertz 386 DX, even on a board with cache. I don't know. Maybe those benchmark numbers are spot on. They seem a little bit low to me, but I don't know. As for that benchmark test, maybe it's just the benchmark for that game. But I ran it 3 times. I took the result of the third run, and I did that 3 times, and I averaged the third run, and that's where I got the results. But yeah, we definitely see the biggest difference in the results with this Wolfenstein test. At the top of the chart, we see the ET4000 and the WDC, and then a couple FPS behind that, we have the Trident card, and then right on its heels, we have the VGA Wonder, and then lastly, we have the A-head card. There's definitely a noticeable difference between the lowest end, which is the A-head card or A-head card, and the WDC and the ET4000 card. So I just want to talk about glitches as well really quick. So with all the benchmarks, I didn't get any graphical glitches except with the ahead card with PCP bench. For some reason, after that card would complete the test, the benchmark test, these lines would appear through the screen. So kind of weird, but that was the only card that gave me any glitches with the benchmarks. Now, not on the chart, I also ran Commander Keen 4, just because that game seems to bring out glitches, and if there's any scrolling issues, they tend to come out in that game. It scrolled fine with all of them. They actually all displayed and ran the game fine, except for the Sang Labs ET4000 card, which gave me some pretty bad graphical issues. So I was able to fix those issues, though. I believe I just turned off some options I put in the options menu, and I got it working. I'm recording this later, so I forget what options, but I will say a little bit later in the video what I did to fix the glitch. But yeah, that card did give me a glitch with Commander Keen, unfortunately.
Okay, so which of these cards ran best in our 40 megahertz 386? Well, they were all pretty much very close to each other performance-wise. Now, there was a difference that was detectable with our benchmarks, but realistically, you know, in actual gameplay and actual sitting there playing at a computer, you might not notice too much between these cards. They're all acceptable in my opinion, but there are slower ones and there are ones with some problems. The one I would least recommend, I guess, is this A-head card. It worked fine, it was acceptable, but it was the slowest of the group as far as the benchmarks go. And there were some graphical glitches with this card too. For instance, running 3D bench, every time that benchmark completed, lines would appear through the screen. But other than that, I didn't get any other glitches. So this is a decent card, but this is a fine card. It might even be a good card, but it would be the one I would least recommend. Next up, we have the Trident and the VGA Wonder, the XL. These are pretty even. The Trident actually came out, you know, marginally faster than the XL card here, but they both work in 8-bit or 16-bit slots, although I would give the edge to the XL. Even though the Trident 8900D was slightly faster than the VGA Wonder here, this one has a lot more versatility, I suppose. This one is, you don't have to set jumpers if you want to put this in an 8-bit slot. You also have the option with this card if you want to use a bus mouse, or if you want to use a CGA monitor, an older monitor, you have the connector for it on this card. This card is also probably, I know this is CGA compatible, this is register compatible, this is one of the more compatible cards with CGA, so I think you have more versatility with this card, even though it's slightly slower than this card. But I guess this would be better in maybe a slower 386 or a 286, where if you really want to go for something faster, go with the Trident. But these are both good cards. So our winners are the WDC card, and of course what we kind of expected, the ET4000. They're pretty much even. One benchmark, this was faster by 0.1, and then in another benchmark this was faster by 0.1, so they're pretty much even. I guess the only thing is, I would say I did have those little glitches with Commander Keen with the ET4000. Now, turning on SVGA mode and turning the smooth scrolling, I forget exactly how it's worded, option in the options fixed the little graphical issue I was having with the ET4000 card. But I have run into very mild graphical issues with these cards before. I believe Ultima 7 is, at least with the VLB version, you get a little distortion at the top of the screen. It's almost like an old VHS, how it gets those little tracking errors. I've seen that in a couple games with the cards using the ET4000 chip, but not many. It's a very rare issue that I've come across it. So I would say these cards are pretty much even. This has a little bit more RAM. This is a 1 megabyte. The WDC card's only 768 KB of video RAM, but it's already more than enough, so that's not really an issue. But these are both really great and fast cards. I guess if I had to recommend one of these for a 40 megahertz 386, I guess I would recommend the WDC card, just because I didn't run into any graphical issues. I didn't have to fiddle with anything like I did with the ET4000. So if I had to pick between these two, I guess I would barely recommend the WDC card, but they're both great cards. So after doing these tests, yeah, I think maybe there would be reason to redo these tests in a faster system. I would be curious about that. I don't really want to do these tests again in a Pentium system or anything like that, just because I want to kind of keep it grounded in what someone might actually be using these cards in. And I guess it is, quite foreseeable that someone would be using a 16-bit ISA video card in a 46 board that maybe didn't have VLB slots. Alright, so yeah, those results in the 386 really weren't that interesting, so I'm going to go back on what I said earlier, and I am going to throw these into a faster 46 system and see how it goes. I'm still not going to throw them in a Pentium. If you're running a Pentium system, there's really no reason to not use a PCI card unless you're just goofing around and doing tests. But I'd be curious to see how these cards work in a faster 486, where they'd still be, quite useful. Like I said earlier, I know a lot of enthusiasts these days in 2020, in this more modern era, when they build a 486, they like to go with a VLB motherboard and use a VLB card. But let's see how some of these higher-end ISA cards work. So for our 486 that we'll be testing these cards in, we'll be using this machine with this Asus 46 motherboard with 64 megabytes of RAM. Unfortunately, there is an issue with this board now, and the L2 cache no longer functions. I've tried replacing it, and it still doesn't function. It will post, but when it goes to load DOS, it locks up, unfortunately, which does significantly slow this machine down. But the CPU we're running is a AMD 5x86 at 133 megahertz, overclocked to 160 megahertz. So we're running a 46 at 160 megahertz on a 40 megahertz front side bus. So that should help to make up some of the speed difference from not having any L2 cache. So it's still going to be, this system's still going to be significantly faster than our 40 megahertz 386. So I'm still interested to see what we get with our cards in this machine. So interestingly enough, two of our cards just flat out failed to work in this machine. The ATI VGA Wonder XL24 and our Trident card, the 8900D. When this one was hooked up, it would just give garbage on the screen, like green and magenta garbage going on. This card, it would post, and then when it get to the RAM count, it would just lock up. I thought maybe it was an issue with the front side bus being 40 megahertz on this machine. Kicking it down to 33 megahertz made no difference. I even went into the BIOS and set the AT bus to 7 point whatever megahertz. No difference whatsoever. I had the same issue. So I don't know what's going on with these two cards in this machine, but I guess I could investigate it a little bit deeper, or maybe pull out another 46, but I'm really lazy and I don't feel like it, so these two cards are disqualified.
Alright, and here we go with the results for the 46. And a quick apology, earlier I did a recording for the 386 test. You might have been hearing like a noise on the mic. That's the air conditioner blowing down on the mic. It's pretty high up, so I'm surprised that it's picking it up, but yeah, that's kind of a problem, and I should have redone that, but I'm not going to. But it's off right now, so this part recording should be a little clear. So apologies for that. Anyways, these tests on the 46, again, we got a bigger contrast here. We just have the two fastest cards this time against the slowest card, and it's basically the same kind of results that we saw before, just kind of bigger numbers. We don't have Wolfenstein on this test. That's been replaced with Quake. Yeah, it's kind of the same things. 3D Bench, you can see, quite a difference between the fastest and the slowest card. Another thing I want to point out, Doom, I'm running on high detail. I was also running it on high detail with the 386 benchmark. So if you think the numbers are a little low, it's because I'm running it on the high details with the benchmark. But anyways, yeah, like I said, just kind of confirming what we kind of already knew, that the ahead is slower than the two fastest. It's a shame those other two cards were disqualified. I just could not get them to run. Quake, not a huge difference between all these cards in Quake. What, the ahead is like 5.7 FPS slower than the two fastest. But, yeah, not much else to say. There's the results.
So did we learn anything running these cards in a much faster system than our 40 megahertz 386? Yes, learned a couple things. We learned that these cards didn't work. I did confirm that they did work in the 386. I put them back in there in case they oddly, randomly died or corrupted between the two tests, and they worked fine in the 386. They did not work in the 486. It could just be my board. It could just be some random setting I have that these cards don't jive with. So it may just be my particular situation. Either way, it proves that these cards do seem to be a little pickier than the other cards about motherboards or speeds or you know, whatnot. So that is a strike against them. Although if they did work, I still suspect they probably would have fell into the same place as they did speed-wise with the 386. So we mostly just got the same results as far as I can tell, but just higher numbers. Surprisingly, this card, even though it was the slowest, it still ran fine in our 486, so it didn't have any problems. We also found out that this WDC card is the equal, if not maybe even better than this ET4000. So what they say about this card is true. It's kind of a hidden gem of the ISA cards. At least I think it is. I don't think a lot of people talk about this WDC card. I mean, WDC, a lot of people say good things about them in general, but I don't hear about this card that often when people are like, what's a great ISA card for DOS? I don't necessarily hear this one come up very often, but this is I would say, at least from the few tests I have done, which in the big picture of things isn't a ton, but from what I've seen from my tests, this is the equal of the ET4000, at least on the ISA bus. And in our previous test with Commander Keen, I had less problems with this card than I did with the ET4000. But this is still a great card. These are all still great cards, ISA cards, but if you're looking for the fastest, at least from this bunch, go with the WDC or the ET4000. This is a head card. It's okay. Not anything horrible to say about it, but it still seems to be the slowest of the cards. Again, I couldn't confirm that on a faster system with these two because just couldn't get them working. So it is what it is. So hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one.